So it seems like Lynette is actually a good 4-star unit for the new Fontaine update. And so in this video, I will showcase to you the full potential of C0 Lynette, as well as explain to you her best builds, teams, artifacts, and weapons. But first, you know, playing new characters is cool and everything, but what about a new game that lets you play as an adorable mushroom? Well, that's exactly what you can do thanks to today's sponsor, ISEKAI Slow Life. In this management sim mobile game, you can meet and hang out with cute characters from many different races. There's a feisty maid Belle, Nip who has a huge cat companion, and Gina who is a bit too eager to be your pet dog. So with these companions, you can bond with them by utilizing their skills, and together you can build the village. But they're also here to help you explore many secrets of Isekai. And when it comes to the management part, all kinds of businesses can flourish in your village. You can have a workshop, a potion store, a tavern, and some good old hot springs. There's going to be many opportunities coming your way, and many of the business owners will depend on you. So build your honor and reputation step by step, because as a cute mushroom, you will grow in power, and eventually you could even reach godhood. Just don't forget there's other shrooms like you out there, so join the Adventurers Guild, as you might just become best friends or opponents, depending on how you approach this. So make sure to download Isekai Slow Life by using my link in the description or scan the QR code, help support my channel, and don't forget to use my code MUSHRUM to redeem 10 free summons. Thanks again to Isekai Slow Life for sponsoring today's video. So let's first take a look at Lynette's abilities and potential. I have her on a 4-set Viridescent Venereer with regular damage dealer main stats. This is like a general build, but I'll talk about other sets later in the video. While the sword she's equipped with is Festering Desire. She could definitely be using the new free-to-play craftable or even the new fishing sword, but I wasn't able to obtain them yet. And as always, we're first starting off with C0 Lynette with level 9 talents. Okay, so her skill creates 4 particles and deals almost 19,000 damage, which is pretty good since it does have a decent multiplier. And just like with any new Fontaine character, she has an alignment that triggers from the skill, and this one is Uxia. Right now the damage is meh, but the ability to disable new enemies and mechanics will be important later on. One interesting thing about her is that at first, the skill heals her for 25% health, and then she loses over 24% health over 4 seconds. So this means she can easily trigger all 3 stacks of the new Hunter set. There's also the hold version of the skill. You start running in a similar manner like Yelan, and she can apply a shadow sign on one enemy, which is this evil cat icon, and once the skill ends, she will come back to the enemy and hit them with the skill. For now, I would say this hold version is irrelevant unless you need a speed boost, but it becomes much more important when you unlock her C1, which I'll talk about in a moment. Now the burst is definitely more interesting. She deals initial damage in a small area and then summons a kitty cat from a top hat. It will taunt the enemies, which may or may not work all the time, but more importantly, it can be infused with one of the elements and deal that specific damage afterwards. Breaking down the damage of this burst, if you start with the infusion, the initial hit deals around 5,300 damage, and then each tick will be about 3,500, and this will happen 11 times. In addition, the Vivid Shot, which is the infused damage the burst fires off, will deal roughly 2,309 damage. But let's not forget that there's swirls happening too, although she is literally at 0 EM here, so it's only 1,600 damage per hit. But in total, if you unload her burst with all the possible damage, she deals almost 64,000. Honestly, it's not that great, but if you do build her with some EM or even triple EM main stats, she can be a great VV Shred support. But let's say she's fully buffed up both from Benny and C6 Farazan. Well then, we're looking at about 2,400 damage, which is not too shabby. But one thing I discovered after testing this is that Lynette's burst does not snapshot. So what this means is that if you use her burst while she's fully buffed, and if you switch out or just leave Benny's circle, the buffs will no longer boost the burst. Although things like Farazan's Anemo Shred on enemies is still fine. But she does bring in a couple of nice passives. The first one boosts everyone's attack from 8 to 20% when using her burst, depending on how many different element types in the party, so it's a decent attack boost, while the second passive just gives a small 15% damage increase for the burst when it infuses an element. By the way, similar to Anemo Traveler, the burst's infusion priority is Cryo, Pyro, Hydro, and then Electro, and you do need to hit the burst with an elemental attack to infuse it, or at least hope the swirl rolls onto it. So as a C0 unit, Lynette seems pretty decent. Obviously, her biggest selling point at C0 is the ability to VV Shred the enemies, while the infusion can be a nice little applicator for a certain element, and of course, the ability to apply Uxia damage is big here. But how strong does she become with Constellations? Well, at C1, she gains the ability to pull in the enemies with the hold version of her skill. I think this is an extremely important upgrade for her because now, not only can she offer the usual stuff Anemo is known for, but she can do some crowd control as well. And this pull is pretty decent, especially if you use Sacrificial Sword that creates 2 pulls in sequence. Now her C2 basically doubles the amount of vivid shots from the burst. So now it fires off 10 shots, and despite the low damage, against multiple enemies, it can be a nice way to reapply infused element for things like Vape or Melt. Moving on, C3 levels up the burst 3 times as usual, great if you want to build up her burst damage, while C5 does the same thing for her skill, which is fine, it will make it hit a bit harder. But C4, I think, is an amazing upgrade. Having 2 copies of the skill means double the suction, and most importantly, double the particles. She is an extremely energy-hungry character, which you'll soon realize why. However, I think the biggest twist here is the way you can play her at C6. So when she uses her skill, she will obtain 20% Anemo damage bonus and gain Anemo infusion for 6 seconds. Basically, this infusion now allows you to play her as an Anemo driver for teams like Taser. I think it's a nice little way to let Lynette enjoyers find some extra time to spend with her. But I would say that C4, and especially C1, is what makes her ascend closer to the godlike supports, such as Sucrose or Kazuha. I'm not saying she needs to be the same as them to be useful, but C1 with the extra grouping and VV Shred just makes the experience, at least for me, more enjoyable. Keep in mind, we are getting 1 free Lynette, so if you pull on either of the Kryn banners, there is a chance you could obtain 1 more copy, and I think at C1, she becomes much more flexible. So I think when it comes to teams, it's pretty simple. Put her into exact same teams you would put any other Anemo unit like Sucrose or Kazuha. However, one thing that she does something other Anemo cannot do is her ability to disable new enemies who are vulnerable to Uxie from her skill. This is definitely something you'll want to consider if you care about the Abyss, especially if you're free to play because she is the only character right now who is free and applies Uxie. Otherwise, there's Reverse Melt Team. It's a team that I often see neglected, but it's a powerful comp, whether inside the Abyss or just exploring the world. You can also use her with Linny. Both of them produce taunts, so double the taunts means double the chances of actually forcing the enemy to attack them instead of your on-field character. But for some unique teams, you can put her into something like Mono Anemo, which is a pretty fun comp. And obviously, outside of Abyss, you can build one of those Sonic teams that have built-in speed ability. Now, when it comes to her build, the biggest thing you want to focus on is energy recharge. I cannot stress this enough, but Lynette is super energy hungry. Even if she produces 4 particles from the skill, the burst costs 70, and often, the team is made up of just 1 animal. With that being said, her energy recharge heavily depends on the team, but the most comfy number to go for would be 200%, although in teams like Taser, it can be lower. So with that in mind, her best sword is going to be anything that has energy recharge substat. The new fishing sword is great for her, probably her best free-to-play option, although her best gacha option is definitely Sacrificial Sword, especially if you have her at C1, so double the suction. But Favonius is also good, not as great as Sac Sword, but still a really reliable option. Otherwise, if you manage to solve her ER issues with artifacts and substats, any of these 5-star swords shown here are great stat sticks, with Mid Splitter and Jade Cutter coming out on the top thanks to their passives and substats. Outside of 5-star options, Wolf Fang, Lion's Roar, and Finale of the Deep are great options, but again, you need to make sure she has enough ER to use them in a reliable way. As for the artifacts, Viridescent Venivere is a no-brainer choice for many teams, but if she's not the only Anemo unit in the team, then Emblem 4 set is great. Also, there's the new Hunter set which can proc all 3 times thanks to her skill healing and draining HP, but I wouldn't honestly use this set on her because it doesn't snapshot on her burst, so it won't last for the whole duration. However, if nobody's running Noblesse in the team, this is also a perfect and stable 4 set to go for. Finally, for some quirky builds, Lava Walker, Blizzard Strayer, and Thunder Soother can work in mono teams, or for Blizzard Strayer, that would be a freeze team. But if you have none of these, just any mix of 2 sets or even in structures can be good, if you want that extra EM for the team. Now, because the majority of her damage comes from the burst, you can build her as a traditional damage dealer with either attack or ER Sands, Anemo Goblet, and crit rate or crit damage circlet. However, if you are thinking of boosting this damage with someone like Benny, it won't work that reliably unless she is on field, since I don't want to repeat myself here, but her burst doesn't snapshot. So if that's a route you don't want to go, you can slap on her triple EM set. She does produce about 7 swirls on a single target at C1, which will be much more better against multiple enemies, and in fact, you can even mix in Elemental Mastery main stats, so she can be this hybrid damage dealer who both excels with swirls and regular damage. But the biggest takeaway, no matter how you build her, is to make sure she has enough ER, and then plan around it. So any energy recharge substat is going to be amazing for her, while everything else shown here can be good to roll on along the way. So I think as a free unit, Lynette is pretty good. She can swirl decent amount of times, she can VV shred the enemies, and once there's a new Abyss cycle, that Usia damage from the skill will be super important if the enemies can be disabled or disrupted. Like, honestly, there's nothing too special about her, especially compared to other Anemo units, but at the same time, I think she has amazing value for beginners, since now you can go to Fontaine directly after Mondstadt. I am a bit annoyed that her best constellation is locked behind C1, but for a 4-star, it's not the worst thing to happen, and I mean, if you're going up against a single target, it won't matter that much if you don't have it. So yeah, Lynette's a solid unit, works great as an Anemo for many teams, and for a freebie, she's a great way to kick off a major update. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful. I'd really appreciate if you could press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.